Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a journey of self-discovery, courage, and the power of reclaiming one's life. This is the story of a woman who, after years of emotional manipulation and betrayal, decides to break free from a life that no longer serves her. From a burned passport to a new beginning in New York, her path to freedom is both heartbreaking and inspiring. Join us as we follow her transformation, one decision at a time. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to start today's story. I stood there, staring at the charred remains of my passport, the edges still smoldering faintly on the cool marble counter of our kitchen. The blue cover, which had once gleamed with promise, was now blackened and curling at the edges. The pages, once filled with my dreams of New York, were now destroyed, crumbling into ashes. A dream that had taken me 2 years to nurture, meticulously planned with the pennies I saved from my part-time job as a teacher, had gone up in flames in a matter of minutes. The joy, the anticipation of experiencing the art, the culture, the freedom of it all, was now gone. My 40th birthday, the milestone I had hoped to celebrate with a trip that would reconnect me with the art history I had abandoned years ago, had been turned into ashes. What did you do? My voice sounded strange in my ears, hollow, as though I was hearing it from a distance. The weight of disbelief hung heavily in the air, but James didn't even glance up from his phone. He was scrolling through something, a faint smile tugging at his lips. His hands, once the ones I trusted, were now cold, indifferent. "You don't need it," he muttered casually, not looking at me. "I told Kenneth I'd join him in New York next week. Someone needs to stay here and look after the house." Kenneth, his business partner, the man whose wife, Natalie, had been sending me increasingly concerned messages over the past few months. "Have you noticed anything strange with James lately? Does James ever mention working late with a client named Donna?" I had ignored those texts, brushing them off as paranoia. But now, as I looked at the ashes of my passport and saw James's suitcase packed by the door, the weight of those messages hit me. The truth, ugly and raw, could no longer be ignored. "You're going to New York." "My New York," I whispered, the betrayal thick in my throat. The city I had dreamed of for years, the city where I thought I would find myself again, was now the destination of someone else. Someone who wasn't me. James finally looked up, his expression a mixture of annoyance and perhaps a trace of pity. "Look, Emma, this is a business opportunity. I can't pass it up. Besides, stay home, clean the house, cook the recipes you've been practicing. You're good at that. I need this break." His words cut deep, deeper than I had ever allowed them to before. What had I become in these years? A shadow of the woman I once was? The thought made my insides twist with a pain I could hardly contain. I had given so much to this man, to this life, only to be reduced to someone who existed solely to maintain the image he wanted to project. I wasn't his partner, his equal. I was merely an accessory, a caretaker for the house that he so meticulously controlled. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. "You need a break?" I whispered, my voice steady now despite the storm churning within me. "From what exactly?" James sighed theatrically, as if I were being unreasonable. "Don't start, Emma. I've made up my mind. I'm leaving tomorrow morning." His words were final, and the door to any chance of dialogue slammed shut with an almost physical force. I stood there, trembling, as I watched him walk away. The silence that filled the house after he left was deafening. It was as if the walls, the very foundation of the home we had built together, were closing in on me. The place I had once loved, the space I had created with my own hands, was now a tomb. I walked through the house, my fingers brushing over the surfaces I had meticulously cared for, and for the first time in years, I saw it for what it truly was, a cage. I went to our bedroom, the room that had once been a sanctuary, and opened the suitcase I had packed for New York, the one he had dismissed as an unnecessary indulgence. Slowly, deliberately, I emptied it, then began to refill it. This time, with things that mattered to me, important documents, photographs, jewelry that had been passed down from my grandmother. and the emergency credit card he didn't know about. Each item I packed, each piece of myself that I reclaimed, made me feel a little stronger, a little more like the woman I once was. Then, with trembling hands, I wrote a note that would change everything. The note was simple: "You're right. I'm good at cleaning, so I've cleaned myself out of your life." As I placed the note on the kitchen counter, next to the ruins of my passport, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: the rush of reclaiming control. I had been living in the shadows for so long, trying to please him, trying to conform to his image of who I should be. But now, I had a choice, and that choice was mine alone. I took one last look at the wedding photo hanging on the wall. The woman in the white dress, with hope shining in her eyes, seemed like a stranger to me now. I didn't recognize her, not in the way I used to. But perhaps, away from here, I could find her again. As I walked out of the house, the rain began to fall, washing away my tears. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in 12 years, tomorrow would be my choice. I didn't go back to the house. I couldn't. I knew if I did, I might crumble under the weight of the years, of the life I had lived, and the life that had been stolen from me without my even realizing it. I went instead to Sarah's townhouse. It was warm, cluttered in a way that felt inviting, books piled haphazardly on coffee tables, mismatched throw pillows scattered across the couch, and walls covered with colorful paintings. Her house felt alive in a way mine never had, a stark contrast to the sterile, controlled environment that James had created. When I arrived, Sarah was quick to welcome me, pulling me into a hug, her arms offering a comfort I hadn't realized I was missing. "Make yourself at home," she said, guiding me to the guest room. Actually, at home, not that sterile museum James calls a house. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of everything crash down on me. Sarah made tea, and we sat together in her cozy kitchen, the scent of the brew enveloping us. For the first time, I found myself telling someone the whole truth about my marriage, the slow, subtle ways James had controlled me, the manipulation that had woven its way into every part of my life, the way he had dismissed my hobbies, my friends, and my interests as insignificant, the way he had always been, just interested, when he checked my phone, laughed off my concerns, and made decisions without consulting me. How slowly, almost imperceptibly, he had isolated me until I was alone with no one left to turn to. "He's been doing this to you for years," Sarah said quietly, her voice full of sympathy and disbelief. "Emotional abuse. Classic." Really? I felt a hollow ache in my chest as I nodded. It was like a light had been turned on, and I could finally see the truth clearly. But even then, it was difficult to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the one I now realized I had been living with. "But he never hit me," I said weakly, trying to justify the confusion in my own mind. "Honey, there are many ways to hurt someone," Sarah replied, her voice firm yet gentle. "And not all of them leave physical scars." Her words echoed in my mind as I sat in silence, feeling the enormity of what I had lived through begin to sink in. I had allowed myself to be controlled, to be gaslit into believing that I was the problem. But now, with the weight of Sarah's understanding and the weight of my own experiences, I could see that the problem wasn't me. It had never been me. Later that night, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw the first of many texts from James. "Where are you? This is childish. Emma, come home now, and we'll forget this happened." His words were as empty as they had always been, aimed at manipulating me into submission, into coming back to the life he had carefully constructed for both of us. But I was no longer that woman. I wasn't going back. I turned off my phone and looked at Sarah. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her eyes steady and full of empathy. I took a deep breath, the clarity I had been searching for all these years settling over me. "I'm going to get a new passport," I said, my voice firm. "And then, I'm going to New York anyway." Sarah smiled, the warmth in her eyes not unlike the first time I'd met her. "Now, that sounds like the Emma I met 12 years ago." I didn't recognize the woman I had been then. The one who had laughed freely. Who had dreamed with wide eyes. Full of possibility. But I knew that I would find her again. Slowly, but surely. The next few days were a blur. I withdrew half of our savings from our joint bank account. The money James had always controlled so carefully. My hands trembled, but I didn't falter. When I left the bank, I knew that I was finally taking ownership of my life, of my future. Later, I found myself standing in front of my old home. The house that had once been my sanctuary. Now, it felt like a prison. I knew James would be at the gym. So I entered quietly, my heart pounding. The house was in disarray. Drawers were pulled out, cabinets opened, all evidence of his frantic search for where I had gone. But I was determined. I went straight to the things that mattered, my mother's recipe book. The novel I had hidden away for years. The small watercolor set I had once used before James convinced me it was a waste of time. As I moved through the house, I stumbled upon something that sent a chill down my spine, James's passport. Pristine, ready for travel, the temptation to destroy it, to make him feel the pain he had caused me, was almost overwhelming. But I wasn't him. I wasn't going to sink to his level. Instead, I took what I truly needed, evidence of my existence. My contributions to this life we had built. The deed to the house. The investment portfolio. The money I had contributed from my inheritance. And then, I found something that made my blood run cold. A second phone, hidden away in his office. Filled with messages from Natalie. Not recent ones, but ones dating back 2 years. The affair had been going on far longer than I had ever imagined. The texts, the photos, the plans for a future I had never been a part of. They all painted a picture of a man I didn't know. A man who had lived a double life. A man who had lied to me for years. When I returned to Sarah's house, my hands were steady, but my heart was heavy. The truth, no matter how painful, had finally come to light. And now, nothing would ever be the same. The days that followed were filled with a strange mix of emotions. I had left my old life behind. But it wasn't the end. It felt more like the beginning of something new. Something I had been too afraid to face. The anger and the sadness still clung to me. But there was something else now. Clarity. I had a future ahead of me. And for the first time in years, I could make decisions that were my own. One evening, as I sat in Sarah's kitchen, her warm home a stark contrast to the coldness I had left behind. The phone buzzed. The screen flashed with a message from James. I know you're with Sarah. I'm coming over. You'll come back. This childishness needs to end. His words were as familiar as they were hollow. The same manipulative tone I had heard 1,000 times before. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I had walked out, and there was no going back. Sarah's face hardened as she looked at the message. Let him come, she said, her voice low but resolute. This is my house. I'm not letting him dictate your life anymore. But I shook my head, surprising myself with the calmness that settled over me. No, this is something I need to do alone. It's time to face him. She didn't argue. She understood. I could feel her concern. But she trusted me to handle it. She insisted on staying upstairs. And I promised her I'd call if I needed help. I knew I was walking into a confrontation. But this time, it was different. I had power over my own decisions now. I wasn't afraid. As the doorbell rang that evening, I felt my heartbeat quicken. The old fear, the old sense of inadequacy, tried to creep back in. But I pushed it away. I wasn't the person who had cowered in silence anymore. I opened the door, and there he stood. James. Immaculately dressed as always. His face cold, his eyes furious. What do you think you're doing? He demanded, pushing past me into the house. You have no idea how embarrassing this is. I had to cancel meetings today to deal with your tantrum. In the past, his words would have cut me deep. Would have made me apologize. Made me fall back into line. But now, I stood firm, unyielding. I wasn't going to back down. You burned my passport, I said, my voice steady. Did you really think I would just accept that and stay home? Waiting for you to come back from your business trip with Donna? His face turned pale, then flushed a deep red. "You've gone through my things," he said, his voice venomous. "That's a new low, Emma." I didn't flinch. "Lower than burning my passport? Lower than the affair you've been having for 2 years? Lower than the money you've been stealing and hiding in offshore accounts?" His expression shifted, from anger to disbelief to guilt. I stepped closer, my voice becoming even firmer. "You don't understand, do you? I stopped being happy a long time ago. I barely remember what it felt like to be happy. And now, I realize, neither of us has been happy. This isn't just about the trip. This is about everything. About how you've controlled me. How you've lied to me. And now I'm done." He took a step back, as if my words had physically struck him. "You don't know anything about business or finances," he said, trying to regain his composure. "I've handled everything for us. You've never needed to worry about that." I shook my head. "I've been teaching part-time for 3 years. Something you would know if you ever asked about my day. I don't need you to take care of me anymore, James. Not like this. I've been looking after everything for so long. Now, it's time for me to take care of myself." James reached for me, but I stepped away, my hands trembling but my resolve stronger than ever. "I withdrew half of our savings today," I told him, watching his face fall, "and I'm filing for divorce. It's too late." His tone shifted again, this time softer, as if trying to manipulate me back into his grasp. "Think about what you're throwing away. Emma, we've been together for 12 years. Who's going to take care of you?" I met his gaze directly, my eyes steady. "I'm taking care of myself now." His face twisted in anger, and he moved toward the door. "You're making a mistake," he spat. "You think you're going to get half of everything? The business is mine. The house is mine. You're nothing without me." I reached for the door handle and opened it wide. "The business was never just yours, James. You just never let me see it." Before he could speak again, I said, "And your business partner's wife is upstairs, ready to testify about your affair. How do you think that's going to play out in court?" He froze, his face paling further. Then, without another word, he turned and left. The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed through the empty house. I felt a strange sense of relief, mixed with disbelief at how far I had come. As I locked the door behind him, I took a deep breath. The confrontation was over. The silence that followed felt different now, not suffocating, but liberating. I was free, and the journey ahead, though uncertain, was mine to choose. As the days went by, I felt the weight of my decision sink in more and more. But in a way that made me feel alive. I had walked away from everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, and about the person I had been. I found solace in small moments, sipping coffee in Sarah's living room, sketching in quiet corners of the city, and even in the comforting hum of daily life that no longer felt controlled or stifled. I went to the passport office and booked my flight to New York. I was no longer bound by anyone's expectations but my own. The thought of returning to art, of standing in front of the paintings I had always admired from afar, filled me with anticipation and joy. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of something familiar, a sense of purpose that had been buried under years of neglect and silence. When I arrived in New York, it wasn't the luxurious trip James had planned with stolen money. No, it was a simpler one, a journey to rediscover myself, to stand before the art I had always dreamed of seeing. And as I wandered through the galleries, sketchbook in hand, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. I didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't waiting for someone else to give me permission to live. I had already taken the first step, and everything else would follow. My story wasn't finished yet, it had just begun. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more life stories. Stay tuned for more heartfelt journeys and profound lessons learned along the way.